Welcome. Today, I'm excited. We're going to be talking about the top 5 things that are facing our veterans today, their top 5 biggest issues. It's going to be a very important show today. Also on the show, I'm being joined by Francis Jackson, who's an attorney who specializes in disability law for those seeking veterans' disability benefits, as well as Social Security disability benefits. For more information, visit veteransbenefits.com, veteransbenefits.com. Francis Jackson, welcome.
Always a pleasure to be here with you, Bert.
All right. You know what? I'm excited about this topic. So important. And I want to just kind of dive into it. And let's start with number one. Number one, probably being mental health. You correct me if I'm wrong. I understand that mental health has been one of the big issues. So let's start with that.
That's correct, Bert. Mental health is a huge issue in the whole veterans arena. And as you probably know, one of the things that happened as a result of the COVID situation, where lots of things were shut down and people were much more isolated as a group, that applied to veterans as well. And social isolation is not good for people as a general rule, and certainly didn't help any of the folks in the veterans world. So the VA has tried to improve things somewhat. Their big initiative in the mental health area in 2022 was the Mission Act, which was intended to, and in fact has, expanded veterans' access to mental health care outside the VA system. And for our viewers who aren't familiar with it, let me just touch on that for a second. The VA system originally was built back in the 50s and in some cases earlier as a network of hospitals on pretty much a state level basis. But the result of that is that veterans who aren't in the immediate area of that facility often had trouble accessing the VA care. So over the last few years, the VA has developed a network of VA vet centers and community clinics to make care more widely available. And then, as I mentioned a moment ago, in 2022, they launched the Mission Act, which expanded access to mental health care outside the VA's internal system of healthcare. And so they really have worked hard over the last year to try to make VA care more accessible. And one of the things they've done this year to try to further remove barriers, particularly for low-income veterans, is they've gone ahead and waived co-payments on all mental health services to veterans. So even though veterans who are not totally and permanently disabled typically have to have a copay for their VA health services, they've waived that in the mental health setting. And as a result, there's an opportunity for folks to get mental health care without any cost at all. So that's their latest kind of broad scale initiative. A couple of other things that are interesting, though. The VA has been working with PTSD in particular much more than most private health practitioners do. Even big networks like Kaiser, the VA has an even bigger network and has really focused in on PTSD because it's such a common problem for vets. So they have really tried hard to look at what are the best treatment alternatives. And one of the things that they've focused on is what they call evidence-based mental health, which is things like cognitive behavioral therapy. They're doing a lot of that. And a newer one called prolonged exposure therapy. And those seem to be helpful, particularly for PTSD and also for depression. I personally wouldn't have guessed that, but that seems to be the case. The other thing that is is going on is the VA is experimenting with some new treatments. I don't know if you've heard anything about virtual reality therapy, but that's one of the new experimental things. We've all seen these virtual reality headset kind of things for gaming, but this is intended to help folks with therapy.
Oh, wait a minute. I have seen some of this where they actually put on the same VR type equipment,
Right.
and the individual walks or feels like he's walking, trying to make that connection with the injured limb or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, that's part of it. And the other thing they're trying out, and this, I was amazed to see that the VA was involved in this. I've always thought of them as sort of stodgy when it came to healthcare, but they are trying out psychedelic assisted therapy, which seems to be a very promising approach for PTSD in particular. I don't really understand, frankly, what it is about the brain that makes that so workable. But my best understanding of how this works is that the psychedelic drugs, and I think they're primarily using LSD, but that what the drug does is, if you will, eliminate some of the conscious barriers to dealing with painful topics, and lets the veteran kind of get to the particularly painful areas. And the initial reports I've read seem quite promising. So we'll see where that all goes. But the bottom line in all that I wanted to stress is that the VA is really working pretty hard in this mental health area. Like any big bureaucracy, they do better in some areas than in others.
Right.
And it's not uniform across the country. Some places are much better equipped and staffed to deal with mental health issues than others, but they're trying pretty hard. And I think it's fair to say that in the PTSD area in particular, they are probably on the cutting edge in terms of providing healthcare, even over most private practice areas. So that's been very nice to see. So they're moving on that. It's far from perfect. There are still lots of folks who could use more care, other care, different care, better care, but they've come an awfully long way from where they were, and I'm hopeful that they'll continue to move forward.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. I think that like you said, look, it's a massive, massive bureaucracy. I'm grateful that they're trying, and like you said, in some areas they do better than other areas, and it's a constant. What do you call it? Constant, never-ending area of improvement
is the right word, but at least they're in there pitching, and I have to say, I'm not always impressed with the VA, but in the PTSD arena in particular, they really are doing an impressive job.
Good. All right, let's talk about suicide. Since we've been talking about mental health, I want to talk about suicide. Is that gotten any better since with all this mental health effort? What's the latest on that?
Well, the VA's been trying to do better with suicide. It's a big issue for veterans who are trying to reintegrate into society, and it's like everything else. They're trying, but the short version is that they're doing better. One of the things that you and I were talking about a minute ago was mental health treatment, and the expansion in mental health treatment does seem to have had some benefits in the area of the suicide prevention. So they're working on that. They're also trying to to do what they're calling evidence-based prevention, meaning they're trying to look at what the factors are that are related to suicide and trying to deal with those underlying factors. And in 2022, they launched the Suicide Prevention Outreach Training and Innovation Center, SPOTIC. How's that for an acronym for you? Anyway, SPOTIC is a national center that they've set up that is intended to provide and does provide training and outreach resources for VA staff who are doing suicide prevention work. And in this year, 2023, the VA has expanded the reach of the Veterans Crisis Line, which is intended to be available for anyone who has suicidal thoughts. So that's a 24/7 confidential service that provides supports to veterans who call in when they're in crisis. They're also looking at mobile services for folks in crisis. And obviously that is geographically limited. They don't have the resources to provide a team everywhere in the country all the time, but they are trying to provide mobile services, particularly in areas with big concentrations of veterans, Southern California, Florida, places like that. So that's in the works. The other thing is that they're, they have the national call-in number. It's 800-273-8255, or if people want to use text, they can text the word HOME, HOME, to 741-741. Those things will get you to the crisis folks. So
nice. Yeah, we'll make sure to get those on the show notes as well. Go ahead.
Thank you. So those are kind of some of the initiatives that the VA is pushing in the area of suicide. It's still far from perfect. The veterans still have a higher rate of suicide than the general public. But as you probably know, the last couple of years, suicide has been up generally. Not just among veterans, but generally with all the upheaval in the country from COVID and various other things that are going on. And so it's a struggle for them, but they're making some headway.
Yeah. You know what? And I think one of the reasons for the struggle is that you also have homelessness among our vets. It's hard to help somebody you can't find.
Yeah.
And a lot of these homeless vets tend to be nomadic. They're not, they're not staying under the same bridge or the same location. Sometimes they're being forced to move. Sometimes they move on their own. Give us an update. What's going on with the homelessness?
Well, as you were saying a moment ago, Bert, homelessness is a serious problem. Goes beyond just veterans, but it's particularly a problem for veterans. Lots of folks that come out of the service, particularly if they have mental health issues, have a lot of difficulty getting kind of reestablished, solid place to live, job, income, all of those things. And so that builds into this homelessness issue. I'm sure you've been to DC and in the winter and seen people sleeping on the grates in the sidewalk because the heat from the building is exhausted there, keeps them from freezing. But it's not good. The big things the VA has been doing in 2022, they set up $1 billion that they set aside. Billion with a B, not an M, a billion in grants to local communities for veterans homelessness programs, and that's a big commitment. You're talking about a lot of resources. And in 2023, this year, they launched something called the Veterans Rapid Rehousing Program, which is intended to specifically focus on people who are in a crisis, losing their housing,
Right.
and work with them to find a new place for them to be housed in a very short period, so that there's no extended period of homelessness. And the new secretary, Dennis McDonough, as you may recall, you and I talked about a year or so ago. He personally has really made a commitment to trying to help veterans with homelessness, and they've done some different initiatives. We talked about some of the money they've set aside, but some of that went to the Los Angeles area, and they have built some dormitory style facilities where they can house a lot of people, but each person has a personal private space, even though there are shared facilities. So it's something they're trying to find a way to improve. They've developed this new Stand Down to End Homelessness initiative. I don't know if you've seen anything in the news about that, but they're having these events around the country that they call stand downs, and the idea is to bring together community resources to help veterans on a bunch of issues, but including homelessness. And so that's one of the more recent attempts to improve the situation. So,
and that's called Stand Down.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm not sure why they picked that particular term, but that's what it's called. It's
Okay.
called a Stand Down, and this most current program is Stand Down to End Homelessness, and they're trying to bring together different community services that can help with that. This Stand Down program, not specifically for homelessness, has been a VA initiative for several years now. It's an attempt to bring together a range of services that may be helpful to veterans, but this current focus is just on homelessness, or primarily on homelessness. And once again, there is an 800 number for folks to call if someone's in need of housing, or if you know of someone who's homeless and want to try to help. The number is 877-424-3838. And there's also a VA website that talks about shelters and transitional housing kind of by area, so folks can find ways to get to assistance in the whole area of homelessness in their community.
Right. Yeah, and it's not that big of an issue. I say that like I know what I'm talking about, but I'm thinking, hey, during the summer, you'll be okay. Maybe, the summer in Arizona might make it a little bit of a challenge, but as opposed to a winter in Maine, homelessness there, now you're talking critical. You got to be able to, pick up the phone or get shelter. And again, as you and I've already discussed, a lot of these homeless vets, they don't have a cell phone. There's no way of contacting them. They have no internet. They don't know. So I'm saying this. So if some of our audience is, they come across a homeless vet, give them this information, give them this phone number, just write it down. Maybe, besides handing them, I know there's a lot of generous people who hand our veterans money. They'll hand them food, hand them this phone number, because it's an 877 or whatever number, and they can call from anywhere. They don't need to they just need access to a phone. They don't have to necessarily pay for a dime.
That's right, Bert. And you were talking about homelessness, and it's a problem. You were using Maine where we have our primary office as an example, and in the winter here, of course, it gets below freezing. It's not safe to sleep out overnight. People literally can freeze to death or get serious frostbite and lose toes and other bad stuff. But even in the summer, the city here in Portland, where our main office is, has just been on an effort to end homeless encampments. They've just removed a couple of them, and they're offering people to go to shelters and so on. But as you know, there are a lot of homeless folks who are not comfortable going to shelters, so it's a problem.
Yeah, I've talked about this before. It is a problem simply because there is what do you call it? There's this I don't want to call it pride, but there's this mindset. That's what it is. It's not pride. It's a mindset that I'm a soldier. I'm tough. I will endure. I'll get through this. I'll overcome. And hey, that's great. And it's good to have a strong mentality, but it's sometimes we all need help. That's just the way it is. Let's talk about this, because everything that we've been talking about leads me to ask you about the overall healthcare, because this is all healthcare so far. And so let's talk about what's going on with the VA versus regarding healthcare.
Sure. Excuse me. Well, as you probably know, Bert, the VA literally has the largest healthcare system in the country. They're bigger than any of the private hospital chains, even folks like Kaiser, who are very large. And they are primarily still providing hospital services on a kind of one facility per state arrangement, as we talked about briefly in the beginning. But they've now kind of spread out their healthcare a lot more with vet centers and clinics. And their long-term plan, which has been presented to Congress, is to eliminate a number of the large facilities and reallocate those funds to more community-based programs. I should mention that so far Congress has shown absolutely no interest in approving the plan, mostly because, in every state, what it would mean is that money that's currently payroll from the federal government in a particular area would go away and be reallocated. And so the folks whose districts are being affected by that are effectively, as far as I can tell, blocking any attempt to really move that plan forward in Congress. So,
Sure.
As you know, nothing is really moving forward in Congress at the moment anyway.
That's right.
But
now would not be a good time to bring up any kind of budget related issues, right?
Yeah, to put it mildly. But all of that aside, Bert, the VA has a pretty comprehensive program of healthcare. They've kind of moved the resources around as best they can within their authority until Congress acts on their proposed plan. And so most veterans are able to get care related to any disabilities that they have. Folks who are considered permanently and totally disabled get 100% of their VA of their health care free through the VA, including dental and other things that aren't readily provided to folks who aren't considered totally disabled. But one of the things I wanted to mention is that the primary veterans benefits insurance coverage is CHAMP VA, which is the community health program, or the civilian health program, civilian health and medical program, CHAMPA, for VA. And one of the things that is in that program that a lot of people don't know about is coverage for spouses and children of a number of veterans. Any veteran who is considered permanently and totally disabled by VA, their dependents, spouse, kids, are actually eligible to get all their health care through the VA, through
Wow,
CHAMP
that's
VA.
nice.
So that's a big deal. And VA estimates that there are, no, VA, sorry, I shouldn't say estimates. VA reports that there are more than 700,000 folks in that category now. And they estimate that there are others who are eligible and have not come forward. But that's probably the largest group for folks who are not veterans themselves, but there are some others. The one that's made a lot of coverage in the news and on television lately has been Camp Lejeune, and I know you're aware of Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, and they had this problem with the contamination in the water there for a number of years, from 52 to 87, and so folks. Sorry, go ahead.
Wait, because you say numerous, numbers. What did you say? Numerous years.
Yeah.
But it's been like a long time. I mean, this is just a ridiculous. This is something that, again, I want to point out and stress that this is something that our veterans, that our military sometimes put up with. These terrible living conditions, which only adds to their illness or their decaying healthcare. And I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to interject that a lot of people aren't aware. They're now hearing, maybe for the last couple of 2 or 3 years, they're hearing about this toxic water at Camp Lejeune, but it's been affecting our military for over 50 years. Yeah,
it's almost my entire lifetime.
Yeah,
and it started in 52 and has gone forward from there. They didn't really solve it until the late 80s. So lots and lots of people got exposed. But one of the things that they have done is to set up a what they call the Camp Lejeune Family Member Program. So anyone who is stationed there for 30 days or more and has a family member that may have been affected by the contaminated water and needs medical help, VA shares the cost of covered health services for those folks. So anyone who's in that category and needs health care should contact the VA and make sure that they get the benefits that they're entitled to. Another piece, if you will, is when folks were stationed in Vietnam and exposed to Agent Orange, there was a fair number of women stationed there, nurses in particular, primarily nurses. And I'm sure some of your viewers have seen the program that used to be on called MASH. And from the time of the Korean War forward, the military has had these military surgical hospitals and staffed in part with nurses. And so had them in Vietnam because of the number of casualties, of course. And those ladies were all exposed to Agent Orange, and as a result, have had a number of children with just a wide variety of birth defects. And so the folks who were exposed to Agent Orange, women who were exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam, their children are potentially eligible for for physical health care. And so you have to be a person who is a child of a Vietnam veteran female, typically nurse, and were conceived after February 28th of 61 up to May 7th of 75, and have some of these birth defects. Those folks can get medical insurance, medical reimbursement, help, cost of help for the costs of covering dealing with those defects. And so that's another possibility. Those things, as you can see, cover people outside the traditional realm of veterans themselves, and so those don't get mentioned a lot. So I wanted to make sure that we raise them with your viewers today, so that anyone who falls in one of those categories and is not already seeking help from the VA does so.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing to bring up. I'm glad you brought it up. The disability compensation is vast, right? I've talked for years, and there's just so many little things that veterans and or their families aren't aware about. I mean, they're and I want to talk about this because, again, it's easy if somebody was hurt, there's a physical injury, that's fairly straightforward. A little bit harder, we've already talked about some of the mental health, that's a little bit more difficult. And then there's all the different other little programs. I know that there's a program to help with schooling. There's a program that will help with the veterans' children's schooling sometimes, and all this other stuff. So let's talk about some of the disability compensation and what's going on with that.
Sure. One other thing I should have mentioned a minute ago, Bert, we were talking about family health care for men who were in Vietnam and whose children have a birth defect called spina bifida. There's also help for those folks. But turning to the disability piece, I need to turn and get a drink of water because my voice is going to heck here. So hang on.
No problem. We can always edit all that stuff out.
All right. Okay. So disability. The VA has two major disability programs. They have disability benefits that are related to or available for service for folks who have disabilities related to their service. And they have a separate program called pension, which is for folks who served in a time of war and have disabilities that are not related to their service, but because they were incurred during a time of war, the government has decided to extend disability benefits to that group as well. So that's now a pretty big chunk of veterans because it covers both the folks who served in Vietnam, who are a relatively large group numerically, and then everybody who served from 1980 on when we went into the Middle East. It falls into that eligible for pension category as well. So those folks who are totally disabled from conditions not related to service can get pension benefits. Works out to about $1,500 a month currently. There's an offset for any other income folks have, but it's intended to keep people who served in a time of war and are now disabled from at least being homeless and financially destitute. So that's one piece. The bigger piece, as you mentioned a moment ago, is disability compensation for folks who have various disabilities related to their time in service. And one of the pieces of that, as you alluded to, is for folks who are in that category and have been found to be totally disabled by VA terms. One of the benefits is payment for college and other postgraduate education or training for their children. So that's a potentially big benefit for veterans who are disabled and unable to earn the money to pay for their kids to go to college.
Yeah, that's tremendous, especially when you hear about the tens of thousands of dollars that some of these kids are walking away with once they graduate college, and even a simple teaching degree, is tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it's true. One of the nice things about teaching and other public service jobs is that if you do that for, I think it's 10 years, they will wipe out your student loans. But nonetheless, there are lots of folks who aren't eligible for that, and so having the VA pay it up front and not racking up those huge debts is a really big deal. But for the veterans themselves, the disability process is pretty straightforward. It's a three requirements. You have to have a current disability. You have to have an event or occurrence or disease or something that happened in service that led to the disability. And then you have to have medical evidence tying the two together, typically an opinion from a doctor explaining how the two get tied together. Although in some cases you can jump over that step by having a condition that falls within the presumptions. So, for example, if you served in Vietnam, it's presumed that your diabetes is service-connected. It's now presumed that your high blood pressure is service-connected. It's presumed that lung cancer and some other cancers are service-connected. So you don't have that. You don't have to have that second piece tying what happened in service to your current disability. But that's a quick outline of the disability piece as well.
Yeah, and again, we've covered a lot of stuff here, and so if somebody has questions, they can go to veteransbenefits.com, reach out to your team, get help. And speaking of veteransbenefits.com, why don't you give us a quick overview? If I'm a veteran, I contact you either by the phone or by the website, and what does that process look like?
Sure. The way it works, if you contact us, one of our intake specialists will be in touch with you. You know, if you call, obviously you go directly to them. If you do a website form, we'll get the form and call. And then what we'll do is kind of a walkthrough of all of the factors that relate to disability compensation. You know, we'll talk to you about when you served, where you served. You know, we'll want to figure out if you're eligible for any of these presumptions, depending on what kind of medical issues you have. We'll go through what your medical issues are, which ones you think might be connected to your service. We'll talk about whether you might be totally disabled by things that are not connected to service, so that you might be eligible for the pension program. And we'll go through your background. We'll talk about your discharge, because the character of your discharge may bear on whether you're eligible for benefits. And, you know, we'll spend typically about a 20-minute kind of quick walkthrough to see if we think we can help. And then if we think we can help, obviously we'll get you all the paperwork that goes with anything related to the government, and including VA disability. And in this case, it's a fair stack of paper that you have to have for the VA. But we'll get all that sent either by mail or electronically, depending on what the person's preference is, and get that to the VA so that we can get the entire set of records for this person, and we'll kind of double check their eligibility and the conditions that they've talked about, and see if there are conditions that they applied for before that they were turned down for, that we might be able to reopen and get them benefits for. And, you know, we'll also look at what the current conditions are that they're concerned with, and put together an application for those if need be. And usually, because that takes some time, what we do first is to file a form called an intent to file, which just means that you're telling the VA this person is going to be making a claim for VA benefits, and it serves as kind of a placeholder. It starts the time running, if you will, for the potential payment of benefits, because the way these claims work if I file a claim today, the VA, when they get around to processing the claim and finally making a decision, if they grant the claim, they can start paying me from, in this case, the beginning of the next month. And so what the intent to file form does is buys you a period of time. If you get that in this month, the benefits would potentially start with the beginning of next month, so long as you file the actual claim, giving all the details of what conditions you're claiming and why and when your service was and all of that. So long as you file that within a year of the intent to file form, then your benefits can go back to that form. So it's a way of kind of submitting a placeholder to make sure that the veteran can get paid for the maximum possible period, even though it sometimes takes a while to figure out all of the potential claims and get all the paperwork in.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. I say extraordinary because they're giving you so much time. When you told me a year, it's like, okay, well, that's nice. Because I at first I thought it was going to be like you have 60 or 90 days, which sometimes when you're trying to dig up stuff from the past, 60 or 90 days isn't enough time. But, at least with the year, you can probably put together enough documentation. You could submit the claim. And then if you have to, you can imagine supplement the claim. But that's awesome. And so if a veteran needs to retain services like yours, how does that work? I don't want to put you on the spot, but
Sure.
I know that typically attorneys cost a lot of money. And so a lot of people are going to be hesitant because they don't want to come out of pocket. So how does your service work?
Sure. Well, our service doesn't require you to come out of pocket. And that's true not only of my firm, but for most of the firms that do this kind of work. The way it's set up, Bert, we mostly do these on what's called a contingent fee agreement. That's pretty common, and a lot of people have heard of it in the context of personal injury claims, where you get in a car accident or something. Attorneys generally take those on a contingent fee agreement, which means that payment is contingent on winning the case. So if we don't get you benefits, there's no fee. And ours is a little different than some in that we have a big enough practice that we've made the decision to advance costs when we need to. So if your particular case requires an opinion by a medical specialist in order to prove the case, we'll advance the money for that. We'll pay the doctor with the understanding that if and when we win the case for you, we'll be paid back that amount in addition to our fees. And so it's a contingent fee. We advance the cost. The contingency in our case is limited to 20%. So this isn't a third like personal injury cases, or sometimes even 40 or 50% in some personal injury cases, but 20%, so 1/5 of any past due benefits that we get for you. And there's nothing to be paid out of ongoing benefits. So, if we're able to get you benefits quickly, there'll be a relatively small cost, even if you get total disability and get paid a significant monthly amount going forward. There's no charge out of that. It just comes out of past due benefits. And again, we'll advance the costs, and we will only be paid from past due benefits. So that's how it works.
That's fantastic. Again, I've said this numerous times. I appreciate the work that you guys do there at veteransbenefits.com, because there are so many people that need to help. There are so many veterans that are suffering in silence. And so anybody listening today, please share this episode with everyone you know. Let them know about veteransbenefits.com. And it's almost like an insurance policy. If they don't need us, if they don't need veteransbenefits.com, great. But maybe down the road, let them know, hey, these people here can help you. They can help you for free. And maybe even explain what benefits you have coming. So there's just so much you can do for them that isn't going to cost them any money, might actually help them enrich themselves with some of these benefits. So Francis Jackson, as always, thank you so much for stopping by, and I appreciate the work that you do.
My pleasure, Bert. It's always nice to be able to chat with you. Take care.
All righty.